Alright. Archon Type B and Strike 1s. The magazines use CZ Shadow 2 75 small frame magazines. The tubes are the same, the springs and the followers are different. But the springs and the followers are from a Temfolio small frame or EEA Witness spring and follower. What you'll notice is this is an EEA Witness tube, and the reason you can't use this tube is because the cutout for the magazine release is in a slightly different spot. Just enough to cause feed issues, usually nosedives or failure to lock back slides. These are just dummy rounds, but when you load the magazine with 23 or 20 or more rounds with the +4 or 5 extensions on them, what you'll get is you'll get this second round gap, which gives the round enough wiggle room to dip down as it's being pushed from the back. This round is already pushed in from nose diving and failure to feeds, but we're going to use this as a dummy just to simulate the problem, because it's not consistent, but it's often enough that you don't want it to happen in a match. And then that's a failure to feed. You can This doesn't seem to happen as often when there's 20 or less rounds in the gun with, say, a +2 extension, because you get less second round gap, but it can still happen. See if we can get it to cycle this time. This is a normal round in there. Still a dummy round. And that time it cycled. This is a CZ small frame MBX magazine. I got MBX to just send me the tubes blank because what I realized with their CZ tubes, this is the original one I had for testing, I had to shave down the top. Not the sides, but I did shave down the sides, but I didn't have to. But I shaved down the top portion and made an adjustment to this part here in order to get it to sit in the gun properly. So that way it'll feed rounds. But because this is a CZ tube, the cut's still in the wrong spot. So I had MBX send me magazines that were blank, and I put my own cuts in them, and now what you get is a very tight fitting magazine with a round that sits very high. When the slide comes forward, it'll push this round here. These hold 24, by the way, but you can only reload with 23. The best you can do is 24 plus or 23 plus 1, because with 25 rounds it won't actually cycle. There's too much tension from the round on the slide. But now as the slide comes forward and starts to push on that, it doesn't dip down as much and feeds properly. And that's simply because the magazine sits higher in the gun. Notice how this one sits. It's not much difference, but there's just a little bit of difference there in height. A little bit more play. Less play. overall this one just feeds a lot smoother too. And that, again, that's because it just sits higher, so it's coming in contact with that feed ramp a lot higher. I've done lots of different things. This is a EEA Witness follower. This is exactly like the Archon and the Arsenal followers. And then the springs are exactly the same too. Originally what I did was, because I was having trouble with the MDX spring and follower in a stock mag configuration with the plus 4.5 extension with feed issues, originally what I did was I attempted to solve the issue by shaving down the followers and trimming the springs to a similar length of the MBX springs. This appeared to work at first, but it is also not reliable. Again, the springs just get really weak, or the rounds get that second round gap that forms at the top, and there just seems to be not enough pressure in the front end. What's actually happening is, let's see if I can do this here. The round falls down in that little spot right there as it starts to feed up towards the top. And because it does that, it allows it to form that gap. And again, that gap is what causes the feed issue. Nose down, into the gun. It's not consistent, it's not often, but it can happen. And in a match, you don't want that. So the original configuration, and I have about 20 of those followers that I modified in different ways to try to get the best fit. Originally, the goal was just to keep the sides flat and longer, so I could keep the follower from tilting and causing that dip, but ultimately that didn't work. And it wasn't a spring pressure issue. I tried 13 round coil springs and I still had the same issue. So it's not an issue with pressure on the spring, but somehow ultimately what ended up fixing it was just allowing the slide to ride high, or the magazine to ride higher, and that's due to the cuts being a little lower than the OE configuration. So even if it does dip, it dips more into the feed ramp rather than the frame of the gun inside there, where it's flatter. Ultimately, I tried to solve that at 1.2 by polishing the feed ramp there, and that seemed to take care of some of the problem, but it still was inconsistent. And again, that's just because the rounds were going close enough to that spot there where it transitions from flat to arched, and they were getting caught in there. So by allowing the magazine to ride higher, it hits at a higher point on that arch and feeds smoothly. For reloading purposes, I use these double alpha CZ plastic mags. They allow the gun, they work fine in the gun, but they don't mar up the base pad. They don't mar up the opening at the bottom, the mag well anyway. Like my original gun was much worse than this one, where the bottom would get chewed up. It looked like a saw blade, it was so bad. This one's not that bad, because I switched. But just imagine as you're doing your reload practices and you miss, and you just keep hitting that same spots all over. Where this, if it hits, it's plastic against plastic or plastic against metal, and it just fits better. Those base pads don't come with it. I shaved the original ones off, added wheel weights inside there to get a better weight simulation, but these are very close to original weight, a loaded weight anyway. Shooting in IDPA, I probably have about 15,000 rounds through a magazine like this one here, where there's only a +1 with 0 malfunctions, and then switching to USPSA, shooting something like this with 23, 22 rounds in it, well, 23 in the starter magazine, sometimes 24 in the starter magazine, but then 22 in the reloads. Occasionally I'd have nosedive issues, and that could throw a whole match off. So that's what sent me down this path to try to figure that out. The good news is this one seems to be working good. It's not fully tested yet. I have 4 of these now, so we'll get some testing done once we start getting to a match. Nothing really fleshes that stuff out like a match does, but I can run 20. I can start with 24. I don't have to load a 24th off another mag. I can just start with 24 in this mag, and then I can reload from a 23 round mag.